Director General Dominique Ristori, dear ambassadors, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the panel, I should like to begin by saying how honored I am to have been invited to share this important debate, the leading global technology and innovation in the renewable sector within the framework of the World Future Energy Summit. Energy today is not only considered as a major challenge from an economic point of view, but precisely for its implication for the environment and also the climate change. Because of increased competition for scarce resources, it poses serious concerns for global security. History will judge our generation on our ability to manage this energy and climate change challenge. The European Union has put its cards on the table. As the world's biggest importer of energy and the second biggest consumer, it was important for us to show a lead. In his political guidelines, President Juncker set out a joint ambition to build a resilient energy union with a forward-looking climate change policy. This impetus, given at the entrance in office of a new Commission, together with agreement by the European Council on the 2030 Climate and Energy Framework, create the right political momentum. Moreover, we should consider as part of the Energy Union also all the matters related with it, such as the industrial policy, the transport sector, the bioeconomy, the blue and green growth. As we need a fundamental energy transition to take place in our economy, we will be heavily reliant on new technologies and innovation. This will require a political commitment that allows innovation to take place. Investments in R&D, but also at the same time creating the appropriate conditions for innovation, for the transfer of technology to the economy and to the society to take place. With regards to the energy sector in particular, the investments necessary from the public and the private sectors for a complete energy transition will be enormous. That kind of investment is currently not taking place, at least not at the level that is required, and therefore the triangle of research, innovation, and investment, which is embedded in the President Juncker investment package, is very important for this sector. The EU is world leader in many of the energy technologies. Moreover, and even more important, the EU is leader in system integration. However, we have to keep this leadership and we have to regain some leadership that we have lost in the past. So it is imperative that we consider the industrial dimension and leverage our technology strengths. It is imperative that we continue to invest in research, technological development, full-scale demonstration, innovation, non-technological research, and market uptaking in the field of energy. Renewable energy is an opportunity from a climate change perspective, as well from the economic and energy security perspective, and also political. President Juncker's statement that Europe should become the world's #1 in renewables poses to all of us, researchers, industrialists, and policymakers, a very important challenge to continue to increase the renewable shares in our energy and transport system, as well as developing an economical and sustainable European renewable supply industry that successfully seizes the opportunities in the emerging global renewables market. All these topics are going to discuss here today. I look forward a very intensive and very deep discussing during the debates of this afternoon. And to give the welcome speech, I will announce that our European Commissioner for Energy and Climate, Mr. Miguel Arias Cañete, will leave us a message by video. He was supposed to be here, but he had a very important meeting on climate diplomacy in Brussels that he had to leave this morning. But we are going to watch a video and a message from Commissioner Cañete. Please, the video.
Dear colleagues, to my deepest regret, I had to leave Abu Dhabi earlier than foreseen to join an important meeting of the European Ministers of Foreign Affairs to discuss our climate diplomacy during this crucial year. As Commissioner in charge of energy and climate, I am extremely pleased to have a dedicated European Union event at this year's edition of the World Future Energy Summit, designed to showcase European Union innovative technologies in the renewable energy sector. Let me welcome you to such a mindful event. Last year, the President of the European Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, highlighted his political guidelines for the work of the European Commission before the European Parliament. His words were crystal clear. We need to strengthen the share of renewable energies in our continent. And he called on us, his team of commissioners, to make sure that Europe becomes the world #1 in renewable energies. As he pointed out, this is not only a matter of a responsible climate change policy, but also of industrial policy imperative if we still want to have affordable energy at our disposal in the medium term. I believe in the potential of green growth, and I am convinced that European companies can lead the way. European technologies are already all around the world. Not only are they good, but they are also reliable. The cost of renewables have sharply fallen over the last 5 years. Solar and wind are increasingly reaching grid parity. In addition, renewable energy technologies are serving our energy security purposes. I initiated yesterday a ministerial roundtable discussion during the IRENA General Assembly. Consensus was reached amongst ministers. Renewable is definitively part of the solution. We, the European Commission, will ensure that the policy framework will provide the investors with the needed stability and predictability. Together with the European governments, we will do our part of the job so that you can deliver yours. I wish you a very constructive conference. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause to Commissioner Cañete. It's my honor now to introduce the Director General for Energy of the European Commission, Mr. Dominique Ristori. Please, Dominique.
Thank you very much, Maria. Excellencies, members of Parliament, dear Claude, ladies and gentlemen. I am, first of all, very pleased to see that the moderator this afternoon will be Maria Carvalho, because, as many of you know very well, she has been rapporteur for the preparation of Horizon 2020, the biggest European program decided by the Council and the European Parliament in support to research and development. And this is not neutral at the time technologies and innovation are so important for supporting renewable energy. But let me say, we can be proud of all we have done and initiated in Europe regarding renewable energy. And this is due mainly to the global management we have decided, all institutions, all member states, to put in place. I mean, in particular, 3 points. First, the adequate policy and regulatory framework. Second, what we have done regarding development of innovation and technologies in the global context of research program. And third, what we have done, and we will be ready to do in the following years regarding the support to investment. First of all, the crucial importance of policy and regulatory framework has to be well underlined. In Europe, we have been probably the first to agree at political level common target for the development of renewables. This has opened a new route for the long term, with a clear support coming from the highest level in the European Union. I mean all our leaders, the Parliament, and the Commission. And we should continue to do that, not only to reach the target 20% of renewables by 2020, but to prepare the ground for the following years. As you know, the European Council in October finished with an agreement with at least 27% by 2030. But what is important is to do the things in the context of a serious governance, ensuring by the addition of efforts of all that we will reach the target and possibly go beyond. And let me say, when some member states are deciding, and these are not intention but decision, to put national ambition in national law, these are positive steps. When Germany is deciding to have a level of ambition of 30% for 2030, or France to have an ambition of 32%, and some of them have said beyond, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Austria, we should all support these trends. As you know, because as a result of our common efforts, of your efforts, we have reached now important level of competitiveness. And this is valid when we are speaking about PV, photovoltaic. This is valid when we are speaking about land wind energy. It has been possible to shift into a more market-oriented approach for renewables. It has been possible to put in place some new rules regarding competition in the context of the state aid guidelines. But we should organize the things in order to prolong these efforts and to facilitate a better and more rapid integration of renewables in the context of the European internal energy market. This is absolutely fundamental. And we need, of course, more interconnection, but we need to facilitate the rules for cross-border trade, to import and export more easily from one member state to another. We have already launched some initial discussion with member states, with parliament. We should prolong that in order to finish with a market design reflecting all this point. I mean, how to organize the things in order to facilitate a better integration of renewables in the market. And we will do that in close cooperation with all key actors, not only at the level of European institutions, at the level of member states, but also with regulators, with TSO, and in consultation with operators. The second point is to continue and to increase our efforts concerning the support to research and technological development innovation. I refer at the beginning to the new Horizon 2020 program. Let me say, for the first time, during the financial negotiation for the period 2013-2020, we finished with an agreement, a clear agreement, at the level of all institutions, in order to dedicate funds for the support of renewables and energy efficiency, quasi 6 billion euros. This is a huge progress, opening new possibilities in terms of supporting renewables. And supporting the whole chain, I can even say. You see, it will become extremely important to be in situation to solve some technological challenges. For example, in the context of offshore wind energy. At the time, we will have to facilitate the development of big projects, in particular in the North Sea. But this should be valid also when we are speaking about solar energy, and when we are speaking about big projects regarding solar energy in the South, and not only in the South. This is valid when we are speaking also about storage. Storage will represent also an important priority in the global management of European internal market. I refer to the market design for securing the grid, for facilitating integration and use of renewables. We will need to do more regarding storage, and not only concerning the use of hydro, but largely beyond. And I have also in mind how to use more hydrogen, including production of hydrogen from renewables energy. And this is representing a new avenue requiring collective effort and a best use of funds available at community level. But this will be valid also when we are speaking about geothermal and biomass and biofuels. Biofuels because we will have to more rapidly shift into the second generation of biofuels, not using food crops and requiring more investment in the context of science and technology. And the third point is investment. It is a good thing to see the new mandate of the new Commission starting with investment. Putting emphasis on investment is a good thing because investment has decreased 15% in Europe since the start of the crisis, since the start of the financial, economic, and social crisis in 2008. And today, we are confronted to a sort of paradox. The present market, financial market, is full of liquidity, but we have not sufficient investment into the real economy. What is needed is to put together promoters of projects on the one hand and investors in the other hand. And we have already different discussions with representatives of the Parliament, with Member States, with European Investment Bank, in order to facilitate a move in that direction. I mean, identification of key projects, having sufficient level of economic viability and European significance, but requiring more risk support. And it is why the cooperation between the European Investment Bank and the European Commission will be so important. But it was also crucial to place energy at the top of priorities in the context of EFSI, the European Fund for strategic investment. Energy is the key priority together with broadband. And to have a capacity to identify the three main components. I mean, not only energy infrastructure for electricity and gas and interconnection, but also renewables and also energy efficiency. We will have to support the whole process, also in terms of technical assistance. And at the end of the day, to have a ground well prepared for the final selection of projects corresponding to all these priorities. This is a huge challenge, but again, requiring the contribution and the support of all key actors. And finally, in the present context, let me say, renewables should be also seen as crucial regarding the preparation of COP21 and the fundamental negotiation in Paris at the end of the year. Energy policy in general will be crucial for ensuring decarbonization and clever negotiation. Of course, our present position regarding target for reduction of greenhouse gas emission, target for development of renewables, target for energy efficiency are representing a good basis, but we should engage and initiate a clever and efficient negotiation regarding a new capacity to convince different partners. Some evolution coming from US and China are positive, but not sufficient. And as you know, we are also supporting many countries in the world, in particular through development funds, in order to facilitate development of renewables and energy efficiency. And all these things should become argument in order to convince also the rest of the world in the global context of negotiation. And we should also not forget the need to associate more the large public, because at the end of the day, all these things should be seen as profitable for the whole society, including at individual level. And I think we are well placed to do that if we will add all our capacities regarding communication. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, we are confronted to huge challenge, extremely exciting, but I am convinced we have all the capacity to finish successfully. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Director General Dominic Ristori, thank you very much. This was the first presentation of a part of this debate that is entitled The Enabling Framework of the European Union Policies. We will have also representations and presentations from the Latvian presidency and from the European Parliament. But now, still talking about the policies framed and proposed by the European Commission, we will have the presentation from DG Clima. It's very important that all the efforts that we are doing in Europe, we will not do it alone. We represent a small percentage of the global emissions, so the COP21 in Paris will be a very important meeting to achieve to a global agreement. And I'm happy to introduce Jake Werksman, that the EU lead negotiator for the COP21, principal advisor of DG Clima of the European Commission. Please.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, colleagues. Let me follow on from the very inspiring remarks from my Commissioner and from the Director General from Energy to place European climate and energy politics and policies in the context of the international negotiations that have been referred to by the previous speakers. Let me start by saying that my remarks will draw upon over 2 decades of European Union experience as a world leader in climate and energy policy. Effective climate and energy policy depends both on innovation as a driver of policy as well as its ability to drive policy itself, particularly in the energy sector and in those sectors that are dependent upon energy. And we have learned as the European Union that this means that targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions should be complemented by a wider set of policies that guide investment down sustainable paths while providing for open markets and open technological choice, and thereby enabling capital and markets to seek the most cost-effective solutions to the climate challenge. Sound climate policy and energy policy starts with sound science, and the latest findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are the most definitive to date, and they clearly connect human-induced emissions to global warming, the impacts of which are currently being felt around the world. So the planetary limits are clear, as is the fact that we are approaching those planetary limits rapidly. Scientists and science, of course, present scenarios on how to prevent dangerous climate change of the kind that are presented on this slide, but it's policymakers that must choose the destination by determining what is safe and the pathway by telling us what is achievable. While some countries' choices will matter more, and the European Union's choice matter a great deal, representing roughly 10% of global emissions today, no country and no region can solve this problem on its own. The action must be collective. And the ambitious choices that countries will make depend upon building political will to underpin those choices. Since 1992, the UN negotiations under the Framework Convention on Climate Change has provided the main political forum and legal forum for this collective action and for driving that political will. We are in the most recent round and crucial round of the global negotiations on an agreement that others have referred to that must be reached in Paris in 2015. All 195 parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, including the European Union and its 28 member states, are in the process of designing their emissions reduction targets as contributions to preventing dangerous climate change from 2020 and onward. These targets will be nationally determined, within the EU also regionally determined. But to succeed, they must be driven by the limits imposed by science. They must be shaped by the logic of economics, and they must be incentivized by political leadership. The EU experience shows that political leadership will depend on support from a very broad base of stakeholders. These stakeholders have to be committed, of course, to preventing dangerous climate change, but also must be built around the recognition that there are benefits, what we refer to as co-benefits of taking action, ambitious action on climate change. Efficiency gains across all sectors, improvements in public health through, for example, improving air quality, but also generally improving the quality of our lives through better transportation, through better energy security and energy choices. The core of EU leadership on climate change and energy policy draws from 20 years now of experience and is beginning to enter its 3rd generation, covering 28 member states and the world's largest economy. It combines a long-term roadmap, a vision that signals that we are part of a deep transformation. These deep transformations are necessary just over the political horizon by 2050 and by 2100, showing that we must move to a carbon-neutral world by the end of the current century if we're to follow the guidance of science. We must also, however, demonstrate that these transformations are indeed also achievable and feasible. The EU has been taking on this challenge through roughly 10-year legal and policy frameworks with 3 main pillars: Currently, we are in what we call the 2020 by 2020 period, which represents 3 headline targets: a commitment to reduce our emissions within the EU by 20% by 2020 from 1990 levels, to improve the mix of renewable energy in our energy mix to 20% by 2020, and to improve energy efficiency by 20% by 2020. These same 3 pillars will make up the core of our climate policy from 2020 onwards, running out to 2030. But the targets have agreed will be more ambitious. We will now aim to achieve at least 40% emissions reductions from 1990 levels by 2030, to ensure that the renewable energy mix within our economy is at least 27% by 2030, and that we will achieve 27% improvements in energy efficiency by 2030. These will be implemented through a mix of policies with the European Union's emissions trading system at its heart. These targets and these policies have been endorsed by the European Union heads of state and will form the heart of the European Union's commitment under the 2015 agreement that we will need to reach with our partners at the end of this year in Paris. The EU is on its way to meeting those 20 by 2020 targets that I just mentioned. We are likely to overachieve by 2020 our emissions reduction target of 20% by 4% and our renewable energy target by 1%. We are facing a challenge in terms of energy efficiency, reaching that energy efficiency goal, in part because of the drop in energy prices and finding the right incentives to improve on energy efficiency in that context. More details in terms of how we've reduced emissions over the past 10 years and how we are moving to reduce emissions further are demonstrated in this chart, which can be made available to you over the internet for more detail. What this demonstrates is that we are possible year on year as a result of these policies to track progress across different sectors that are part of the European Union emissions trading system. And while some of these emissions reductions have been achieved through the economic downturn, where demand for energy has decreased somewhat, mostly these have been driven as a result of European Union climate policies. Through these policies, indeed, the European Union has effectively begun to decouple economic growth from greenhouse gas emissions growth, and is in the process of generating much broader societal benefits, including fuel savings, energy security, growth in jobs, and reduced air pollution. Turning now to the most relevant sector for our discussions this afternoon and over previous days, the renewable energy targets. Under the European Union climate and energy policies, combined with even more ambitious policies at the member state level, the European Union is on track to achieve its renewables targets for 2020 and, as I said before, to outperform. This will help lead us towards that vision that the previous speakers have referred to as part of the Juncker Plan to ensure that the European Union is indeed the world's leader in the production and use of renewable energies. And indeed, today, the European Union is home to 44% of the world's renewable energy capacity. In that process, we have also seen, during this period of economic downturn, that the renewable energy sector is one of the fastest growing in terms of job creation as well. The European Union is also home to policy innovation as well, which helps in turn to drive technological innovation. To further mainstream climate change objectives into government policy, the European Union has set targets at the very core of European community and European Union decision-making, essentially trying to change the way government sets priorities and the way in which it works on a day-to-day basis. We now have a target within the setting of European Union budgets to commit to ensure 20% of all spending within the EU as a region is climate relevant. This ranges from our investments through development assistance and development cooperation with poorer countries, to the European Union's agricultural policies, and of course is at the heart of our investments with regard to climate and energy policy. This involves approximately 100 billion euros in commitments between 2014 and 2020 out of that budget. As has also been mentioned, the European Union has been investing significantly through its research and innovation budget, referred to as Horizon 2020. 35% of the latest budget for research and innovation, up to 65 billion euros, will be available for climate-related purposes. And we've also begun to experiment with earmarking climate-related revenue, and specifically revenue coming from the emissions trading system and the auctioning of allowances, to be invested and co-invested in innovative low-emissions projects around the European Union. This will dovetail in to the Juncker investment package that was mentioned by previous speakers. Overall, the impact of these policies has enabled the EU to reduce its emissions, to defend and indeed grow market positions in energy-intensive, trade-exposed industries, including steel, chemicals, and ceramics, and to grow jobs in those sectors where demand is likely to grow, both within the European Union, but also in the context of international service markets. So in conclusion, climate action, to achieve its ultimate objective of preventing dangerous temperature rise, must become global. It must be part of that global deal that we reach in Paris in 2015. Companies and economies must increasingly compete in policy terms to adopt the most ambitious targets, and in commercial terms to generate the products and the services that will reduce emissions at the lowest cost. The European Union will be ready to formally announce its targets for the 2015 agreement by the end of the first quarter of this year, and invites its partners, particularly in the major economies, and its competitors around the world to do the same. And finally, the European Union calls upon the important stakeholders represented here, both representing European Union-based corporations, but also companies around the world, to support their countries and us in doing this. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make these remarks, and I look forward to the discussion that follows.
Thank you very much. We have now the point of view of the Latvian presidency, and I'm presenting Mrs. Timofejeva, Director of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Department in the Latvian Ministry of Economies, that she will talk on the EU renewable policy, defining the role of research and innovation. Please.
Thank you, Maria. Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors. If I would be very efficient, I would say that I can agree with the statement of Commissioner and Director General as well. But first of all, let me thank the European Commission on behalf of Latvian Presidency in the European Council and my Minister, Mrs. Dana Reizniece-Ozola, on the organization of discussion on renewables and R&D sector in renewable energy. The Abu Dhabi and Sustainable Week is the best place when we can speak about future of our energy policy, not only in EU, but in the whole world. And so we can have a discussion between policymakers, colleagues from financial sector, from businesses, from academia and media, as well as a non-governmental organization. And it's a real opportunity to find the best way and best solution on the results for sustainable energy for all of us and for our next generation. In our view, the sustainable energy is a need for all of us to secure our energy independency, and one of the tools to reach our ultimate goal, energy security. But in that discussion, we should and could not forget about the competitiveness of our economies and the benefits for our end users. For the moment, it is already known and shown that we cannot use one solution-fit-all approach. It is visible in Europe already. Looking from my country point of view, We have sufficient hydro and biomass resources, which are mainly used to produce green energy and green central heating. On the other hand, we have a problem with solar technologies. We do not have enough sunny times for using this technology as a consumer-friendly and cost-effective for them. And we would be glad that our research and development sector could work on that problem. As Director General already explained, EU budget are defining a lot of financial resources for development, for research and development. And we are glad that there is a shift in policymakers' minds that the future of our member states for European Union is, it should be more greener and we should work on low carbon technologies. And it should be mentioned that we need a solution which takes into account exact needs for different regions. And maybe it is time to start how we can combine two different renewable energy technologies and to find the solution how we be more efficient in that way. But there is a small but. We know that research, development, innovation is not a short-term process, it's a long-term process. And we should be patient in that way and leave a time for our people to find the best solution for us and to speak about next generation renewable technologies. In that case, previous speakers are mentioned already biofuels and the second generation biofuels. We know that the discussion within member states, within European Council, with business companies are leading to some disbelief on that approach, in particular because of pilot projects and studies which are shown a great a major impact on end user and the high costs for all of us. And maybe we should think about a little bit out of box and to try to find another way how we are working on second generation biofuels, not using the crops for that. And as a Latvian presidency, I would say that on our agenda for energy policy will be not only climate and energy framework, but we will start our Riga process for energy union with a conference in Riga on 6 February to launching energy union, to have possibility to see part of you in Riga and to try to find the best way how we can make our world more greener, more secure for our next generation. Thank you.
And to complete this first round of the European point of view of the different institutions, we have now the member of European Parliament, Claude Turmes, that you all know is a champion on renewables and energy efficiency. Claude.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to see you because I'm a bit too much exposed. So I hope that I will be able to speak not only to Europeans which are in this room, but also for those who are outside. So my first message is, renewable energy is hope. It's hope for these 1.5 billion citizens of this planet who don't have access to electricity. And with the falling PV prices, I think there is no excuse whatsoever not to speed up electrification of rural areas in Africa, Asia, South America, I think it's a scandal that we have 1.5 billion people not having electricity, and poverty is very much linked to the fact that you don't have electricity. So I think with the huge cost regression on PV, this is probably the best hope or also message for those 1.5 billion citizens who don't enjoy our luxury of having electricity. Renewable energy is also hope for climate change. These climate change negotiations are horribly difficult. Also because heads of states, business communities, trade unions, ordinary citizens are often not convinced about how to reach 70, 80, 90, maybe at the end of the decade, 100% of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And I was also very heavily confronted with this Copenhagen syndrome, so we were so hopeful before Copenhagen, and then I think I had to pay several visits to my psychotherapists afterwards. And why did it fail, Copenhagen? Of course, because of all kinds of geopolitical fights, but these will never disappear. My analysis is Copenhagen failed because we didn't work enough on climate solutions. If you want somebody to cross a river and going from a society which is high carbon to a society which is zero carbon, that's not as easy from going from Coca-Cola full sugar to zero Coca-Cola. So you need to know how to cross this river. And therefore, my approach to climate change is we need to put steps, rocks, stones in this river. The river needs, so if I stand here and I have to walk over, if I have a big stone called renewable energy, if I have a big stone called energy efficiency, if I have a big stone called grids and interconnections, then I know what I have to cross. I will not be afraid that I will basically be rushed off by the river or die because I'm not able to swim good enough. So renewable energy is also the hope, together with development of efficiency technologies, to get the climate change problem fixed. And third, let's be honest, energy is one of the roots of the geopolitical tensions in this world. And even for those who are sitting on oil and gas, I think sometimes if the oil reserves are too big, you may have some foreigners flying in and trying to get rid of you, to get a better access to oil. That happened already several times in history, also in recent history. So renewable energy and energy efficiency will, and it's the only hope I see also, to diminish the geopolitical tensions which we have in this world. Maybe then also for those of you who are less deep in this institutional setting of Europe, what is European policy? You have European Commission proposing legislation, you have Latvia or other governments sitting at the table negotiating, and then you have the European Parliament where you have women and men like me, and then we negotiate. So what did we do as legislation? And I think that's very important to understand. If you want to develop an energy transition, you need three policies. The first one is you need a policy on grid. The first thing which we did was in 2003, we separated the grids, the transmission grids, from the ownership of the power companies. That was crucial if you want to invite new entrants into the system. Also, we are in power systems where we have 30% of nuclear, 30% of coal, 30 or 40% of gas. So all those who own this, if they own also the grid, they will do nothing. They will not do nothing. They will do everything to prevent new actors to come in too. And therefore, the first thing, if you want a high renewable society, you need to separate the grid from the ownership of the power plants. The second thing we did a law on minimum efficiency for refrigerators, computers, cars, and so on and so on. So we did a law to diminish the energy use in appliances, goods, and so on. And later we did also a law on near-zero energy houses for new building, and we did a law on renovation of the buildings, which is, of course, for us in Europe, in a continent where 80 to 90% of the buildings which we will live in 2050 are buildings which are already existing. So for us, renovation is much more important than for a country like Abu Dhabi, where basically buildings grow like mushrooms. And we did a renewable energy directive with targets, with support schemes, with priority access, and with cooperation between member states. So when you are from Mars or Abu Dhabi or US or China and you look to Europe, the only way to understand our success story is this combination of diminishing demand, creating a neutral actor on the grid, and a concrete framework where we create investor confidence, where investors go to banks and where the bankers say, yes, I know we have this legislation, yes, I know that when investing into renewables, I as a banker has very little risk and I give you the money and I give it to you relatively with low interest rates. So that was our policy. Good, and then of course beyond that, on this question, how do we drive technology, and this slogan, this political mandate we have now on Europe being the number one in renewables. So first, for all non-Europeans here, my interpretation of this is, so I was a football player before being an energy player. So Europe should prepare professionally, but if we lose at the end in a match where we have a fantastic match with plenty of goals worldwide, and I will not mind if China or US or Abu Dhabi wins, but only under the condition that it is a beautiful game with a lot of goals. So, and then, of course, I will give you a bit of a flavor what we did or what we will continue to do to be and to remain the number one in this. Those of you who visit Europe as a tourist, I think even if you visited it 30 years ago, there were already wind turbines, but more of the kind of the left one. So we had a tradition of wind turbines, but then we will have a representative from Denmark. Then I was told somewhere in the 70s, a Danish, I think he was building furniture. He said he tried to copy in a cheap way these middle-age turbines. And can you imagine, from especially Denmark, from a handy-crafted wooden wind turbine, we have got, and I was to say to 7.5 megawatt, but fortunately I spoke to my neighbor and he says to me, Vestas has now an 8 megawatt turbine, 8,000 kilowatt in one tower. And the good news is, because these towers are also much higher, we can now produce wind effectively in Europe, not only in Scotland and on the coast, but also inside Europe. The higher the towers, the more easy it is also inland to produce wind. And the second thing which the wind producers did, we have now wind turbines which are optimized to maximum energy and not to peak energy, which is very important if you want to integrate that into the grid. So it is about scaling and technology progress. The second thing, and I think we discussed this a lot on IRENA, from 0 to 10% of renewables, your grid will not even notice that you have renewables. From 10 to 30, then you have, of course, to think about to bring good forecasting in. You need to better plan for what is when there is no wind, what is when there is a high wind, high solar on a Sunday where there is no demand. So how do you cope with it? And that is where our transmission system operators, be them 50 Hertz or the Danish network operators, the Portuguese, the Spanish, RTE in France, I think we have today those grid operators which are front running worldwide on grid integration. And we will continue with this, and that's another, I think, if you want to go renewables, you need visions and you need planification. And what we do in this very moment is we have a diamond in Europe, a diamond which we have not yet really polished. This diamond is the North Sea. In the North Sea alone, we can produce electricity for almost half of our demand in Europe. So what we are doing now is, after first generation of offshore investments, we are now doing a roadmap for the whole North Seas, and you see these dots and lines. The lines, the yellow lines are cables which we built, for example, between Norway and Germany, Denmark and Netherlands, Denmark and Norway, which are existing. And we have decided now, for example, on this cable from Norway to UK, this cable has been decided to be invested in 1.5 months ago. So we will have an interconnected countries around the North Sea, and we will do a second trick, which is we will try to link on the way from one country to another, offshore into. So planning is extremely important. And one word on Denmark. Denmark has the best planning regime, in my eyes, for offshore wind. Why? The network operator in Denmark is responsible to get the authorization, to build the cable and everything. So it is plug-in ready, and then they do a tender, which then brings, of course, competitive bids in, also because you have a very high technical front work which is done. The thing which is the big thing this year and next year is what we call the market design. Power markets technically are called energy-only markets. So the energy which you produce goes to a power pool, and what is happening, of course, with a lot of renewables is that when you look to the right side, high wind pushes, of course, all the most expensive power plants out of the market. That's great for consumers. Industry in Europe has today the lowest electricity cost that they had over the last 10 years. The German industry export wunder is also linked to the fact that through renewables, Germany has the cheapest electricity prices all over Europe and has very competitive electricity prices for industry also on a worldwide combination. But there is a but in this. The price on the biggest European power exchange, which is Leipzig in Germany, the price was 60, 65 3 years ago. Now it's 35, and the future, so the 5-year contracts forward, show that the analysts estimate that it will be with 35 euro per megawatt hour. I have a quick question to all of you. Who in the room is willing to build a new power supply for 35 euro per megawatt hour? So can anyone raise? Okay, sir, Can we bring a microphone? Yeah, so tell us what kind of technology you offer.
Yes, I see GIS, which we will offer.
No, take the microphone and explain us.
Actually, I will not take care of the technical things, but I take care of the administration thing and try to find the finance. But anyhow, there is many source of advance now to have the technology. We have in Uppsala University of Sweden the new technology of CIGS. But we try to find the one who is the cheapest, because as a country and poor, not organized country in Egypt by good way, we have long way. We didn't have the banks, as you mentioned, which didn't give support to such things. Plus, we didn't get the right cooperation from the European Union to North Africa. Of course, you have Egypt as a dangerous land to invest in, and that's why it's hurt us very much.
Okay, good. So we will come back to that, but I bet with you, if I offer you a contract over 1,000 megawatt for 35 euro per megawatt hour, I think you will find no banker who will lend you the money, because for 35 euro today, I think the cheapest technologies are probably around 50, 55 on renewables.
51.
Yeah, 51. It's not 35. So,
No, it's not
so good.
35.
So, but I stop it here. So interaction is good, but I have to stay in control. So our problem is the power price is now so low, and it will stay so low. In Scandinavia, it's 28 over the last year in average, that nobody will invest. So we need, this market was never designed for renewable energies. It was designed for coal and gas, which have, of course, because you have to buy fuel, you have higher marginal costs. So we need now to do a redesign. That will be the single biggest task now, and we cannot go anywhere because there is no other to learn, because there is no other region in the world where you have such high shares. Germany has done a brilliant intellectual exercise called Market Design 2.0, and that will be probably the inspiring, so that will inspire the whole debate in Europe. Good. And then the last thing, and now I have to see, yeah, so look carefully. So this is a painting for the new Guggenheim Museum in Abu Dhabi. Could be. That would be one option to explain it. It is decentralized small photovoltaic installations evolution over 6 years in Germany. That was when the price of PV was 15 euro cents. The new PV today is 10, 12, and the next generation, the heterojunction PV, will even in Europe be able to produce, even on small scale, probably at 8, 9. Electricity costs in Europe differ, depending on the country, between 15 and 25 or 28. So the real change will be this extreme disruptive decentralization. And this happens in a moment where batteries are still expensive. So, and we know that because of the electric car, there has never been more money invested into batteries, and there's a huge competition between China, US, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Europe, on who will be the battery champion. So the real change, which is now on the way, and I think that's also the change which you have to anticipate in your countries, is this decentralized electricity system, and we will have to do adoptions, and we will hopefully do legislation which we will call the retail market legislation, in order to get the consumer to play a prosumer, a proactive role in our energy transmission. That's all for today. Thank you very much.